The debt collection industry has a new tactic beyond just nonstop phone calls and in-person visits. They're now suing debtors with the assumption that most people aren't going to show up in the courtroom to defend themselves. And with America's nearly $12 trillion in debt, that's up nearly 4% from 2013, the problem could be getting more serious for those who owe money and even some who don't owe money. Joining me to discuss this is HuffPost Trends reporter Hunter Stuart, whose new article dug into the issue on the HuffPost this week. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you too.
Right, so
how you doing?
I get how debt collectors operate, but what happens when they file these lawsuits?
Well, what happens is, ideally you get a notice at home and you show up for court and you can fight it, and like all Americans, you have your chance to defend yourself. But unfortunately, and this is what my article was about, and it was hinged to a big report by a consumer advocacy group, more and more people have no idea that they're even being sued until suddenly they're finding that their wages are being garnished or their bank accounts are frozen.
Or something, yeah.
Yeah, it's scary stuff.
That is really scary stuff. The University of Maryland actually did a study on this, and they write about, they say, in debt buyer cases, the vast majority of consumers lose the vast majority of cases by default, the vast majority of the time. Consumers had no lawyer in 98% of the cases, and those who filed a notice that they intended to defend themselves without an attorney fared poorly, both in court and in out-of-court settlements. You talk about this Maryland stuff in your piece. Is this fair?
Is it fair? Not really. The debt collection industry exists for a reason. People, when they borrow money, they're required to pay back their debts. So, it keeps credit widely available for Americans. It keeps the cost of credit low. So they're an important industry, but at the same time, it seems from what I learned that there's a lack of regulation here. When you have hundreds of thousands of these cases happening across the country, all these default judgments, I think most people, if they got a notice to appear in court, they would go. So I think.
Well, help me understand. Are people actually being served papers, or are they just being mailed out? Stuff's just being mailed out?
Oh, well, I think the laws differ state by state. So in a lot of states, and New York just changed this law recently, you have to actually be handed the piece of paper because, politicians realize that it's important that you receive the paper. You can't just mail it because mail gets lost.
Absolutely. Yeah, which creates a problem, although lost mail probably benefits the debt collector because they don't want you in the courtroom anyway.
Yeah, they have a huge financial incentive. Absolutely.
All right, well, you talked to a retired veteran who lost his mother's house over a missed notice on a $2,500 MasterCard bill.
Yeah.
And he says he never even had a MasterCard. That's the crazy part.
Yeah, I never had a MasterCard.
You wrote that lenders not even having proof of the debt was a common issue. I want to show you all a chart. 94% of accounts did not have documentation when debt was purchased. How does that happen? In other words, they purchased the debt. So, they purchase a Mark Hill, I make up a credit card, Capital One debt or whatever. I don't have a Capital One card, but they don't ask for documentation from Capital One that I have one, so they don't really know whether it's me or not. And then I get this letter to my house telling me that I owe them a bunch of money and that they're going to take me to court. And then I'm now forced to get an attorney to defend myself, or as most of the cases, not show up with one. And I could end up getting screwed or having my credit messed up for something I didn't even do in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of the problem is that the way the debt buyer industry works is that there are companies where all they do are buy debts, and they buy debts for pennies on the dollar, and the older the debt is, the cheaper it is and the less information it has with it. And they make their money often by collecting on those debts, but also by selling those debts to another debt buyer. So it goes down the chain. It's like a game of telephone. So every step of the way, because it costs more to get more information, companies can keep their profits higher if they're not paying for that extra information. And as it moves down the chain, you're losing this crucial information about who the debt is owed to and where that person lives. Yeah. So I think that's where a lot of the problems come from.
Well, this is dangerous stuff. I'm glad you're keeping us aware of it.
Yeah, it's scary.
Thank you, man.
Thanks a lot.